Here are 30 lesser-known facts about George Washington, the first President of the United States. 1. He didn't have a middle name. Middle names were uncommon in the 18th century. 2. Washington was largely self-taught. His formal education ended at around 15 years old. 3. He initially pursued a career as a surveyor. Before joining the military, Washington worked as a professional surveyor, mapping land in Virginia. 4. He was not born at Mount Vernon. George Washington was born at his family's Pope's Creek estate in Westmoreland County, Virginia, in 1732. 5. He wasn't the first choice to lead the Continental Army. Many people wanted John Hancock for the job. 6. Washington lost more battles than he won. While he was a resilient leader, Washington's military career had significant losses, including battles like New York and Fort Necessity. 7. He didn't chop down a cherry tree. The famous story about Washington and the cherry tree is a myth popularized by Parson Weems's biography. 8. He never lived in the White House. Washington served as president in New York and Philadelphia. The White House wasn't completed until after his presidency. 9. He was one of the richest men in America at the time of his death. Washington's wealth came from his vast land holdings, plantations, and slavery. 10. He was a whiskey distiller. Washington opened a whiskey distillery at Mount Vernon, which became one of the largest in America by 1799. 11. He had no biological children. Washington and his wife Martha did not have any children together, though he adopted Martha's 2 children from her first marriage. 12. He had false teeth, but they weren't wooden. Washington's dentures were made from various materials, including human and animal teeth, ivory and metal, but not wood. 13. He was an expert horseman. Washington was known for his exceptional skills on horseback and was often described as one of the best horsemen of his era. 14. Washington had red hair. In his youth, Washington was a natural redhead, but his hair turned grey later in life, leading him to wear powdered wigs as was fashionable. 15. He was reluctant to become president. Washington did not actively seek the presidency and only accepted the role after being convinced by others. 16. He started the tradition of the presidential inauguration speech. Washington was the first to deliver an inaugural address when he was sworn in as president. 17. Washington's birthday was once celebrated on 2 different dates. He was born on February 11th, 1731, Old Style, but after the adoption of the Gregorian calendar, his birthday shifted to February 22nd, 1732-18. He was almost captured during the Revolutionary War. The British nearly captured Washington during the Battle of Long Island, but he narrowly escaped. 19. He signed the first copyright law. The Copyright Act of 1790 was signed by Washington, protecting authors' rights. 20. Washington was known for his stoicism. He was known for keeping his emotions under control, rarely showing anger or distress in public. 21. He was fond of dancing. Washington frequently attended balls and enjoyed dancing the minuet. 22. He had an intense fear of being buried alive. Washington insisted that his body be laid out for 3 days after death to ensure he was really dead. 23. He was the only founding father to free all of his enslaved people. In his will, Washington arranged to free the 123 enslaved people he personally owned after his wife's death. 24. He was a dog lover. Washington bred and kept many dogs and is credited with developing a breed called the American Foxhound. 25. He was unanimously elected president. Washington remains the only U.S. president to be unanimously elected by the Electoral College. Twice, in fact. 26. He was the first American citizen. When the United States Constitution was adopted, Washington became the first person to be naturalized as a citizen under the new government. 27. He was a Freemason. Washington joined the Freemasons in 1752 and was active in the organization throughout his life. 28. He wasn't always victorious in his youth. As a young officer in the Virginia militia, Washington was forced to surrender Fort Necessity to the French during the French and Indian War. 29. He declined a third term. Although Washington could have served a third term as president, he voluntarily stepped down, establishing the precedent for a peaceful transfer of power. 30. Washington's estate was highly diversified. Besides being a plantation owner, Mount Vernon had various industries, including fishing, a distillery, blacksmithing, and flour milling. These facts illustrate the many dimensions of George Washington's life, beyond just his role as a military leader and president.